I think I was going through the classic thing where I'm like, oh my God, I think I'm sucking at being a lawyer, and I'm definitely sucking at being that constant thing we all experience. Like,
I'm laughing because we've all lived it.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Like,
I'm
not doing anything well.
No, you're just like, you're doing it, but you're not doing anything well. Like, I had that moment of like, what am I doing? Unfortunately, if you want to have a body that can keep doing the things that you love, whether that's dance or pickleball or hiking, you got to do a little bit of maintenance. Like, this is your car, your one car.
What's the thing with having 2 teenage girls that you didn't expect, where you're like, whoa, this is hard?
Like, everyone should look forward to having teenagers because I think they're the best. So you have to like understand how their brain works. I read this amazing book called The Teenage Brain, which I totally recommend to any parent. You realize everything they're doing is textbook. They all lie, and they lie about stupid stuff. Like, you say, hey, did you start your laundry? And they're like, I did. And then you go in their room and their laundry's on the floor. I'm like, dude, save your lies for like something big.
Talk to us about your partnership with Kelly. It's like you and Kelly all the time.
Like, sometimes we get real annoyed with each other. Ultimately, we really get along well, most of the time. It's like 51-49, and I'm sort of the ultimate decider on like real big important things. At some point, someone has to be that person, and that's usually me. And the other thing too is, from a skill perspective, we are so different. Many people who join our program suffer from an all or nothing mindset, and I think this is really common for a lot of people when it comes to their health and fitness. People have a lot of closely held views that I think are incorrect.
Before we get into today's conversation, 2 quick things I want to mention. First, the Breadwinners newsletter is on Substack. It's where I put the stuff that doesn't fit in a podcast episode. Think of it as a group chat you didn't know you needed. Real talk about money, childcare, partnership dynamics, and the messy middle of building a life that actually works. No polished advice, just the honest, unfiltered conversation we'd be having over dinner. Feel free to subscribe at wearetheBreadwinners.substack.com. Link is also in the show notes below. And second, if you're getting value from these conversations, I need to ask you to do something that makes a real difference. Subscribe and rate the Breadwinners podcast wherever you're listening. And here's why it matters. Every subscription and rating tells the platforms that this content is resonating, which helps us reach more women who are redefining what it means to be a breadwinner and their families and communities. And honestly, it's what allows us to keep producing this show and growing this movement. So hit subscribe, leave a rating if you can, and help us reach the women who need to know they're not alone in this. Welcome back. Today's guest takes me back to 2011 San Francisco, when I was part of the CrossFit community that was exploding with energy and possibility. Juliet Starrett and her husband Kelly were right at the center of that movement, and in many ways, they helped create it. In 2005, they co-founded San Francisco CrossFit, one of the first 25 CrossFit affiliates in the world. What started in a parking lot behind a sporting goods store, we called it the Parking Lot of Dreams, grew into one of the most formidable spaces focused on human movement and physical community in the country. When the pandemic hit in 2020, they made the heartbreaking decision to close its doors after 15 years. But by then, the idea they'd built their lives around had already reached millions of people. Before any of that, Juliet was a world-class whitewater paddler, 3 world championship titles and 5 national titles. She then put herself through law school, practicing for nearly a decade, and was building San Francisco CrossFit on the side. This woman does not do things halfway. Today, Juliet co-leads the Ready State with her husband Kelly, where they've transformed how millions of people think about mobility, longevity, and what it means to truly be built to last. Their latest book, Built to Move, is a New York Times bestseller. There's a through line in everything Juliet does. She applies the same principles to her life that she teaches about the body: sustainability over intensity, consistency over heroics, and building enough of a foundation that when life tries to knock you down, you get back up faster than anyone thought possible. Today, we're going deep on real architecture of equal partnership in business and in life, raising teenagers who are watching your every move, and what it looks like to build something sustainable as a breadwinner mother. Please welcome Juliet Starrett. Juliet, this is such a treat. I feel so lucky to be here sitting with you.
Well, it's so awesome to reconnect. I'll start and then say that I was lucky enough to go to your dinner last night that you hosted, the Breadwinners dinner. And it was such a cool event. And one of the things that really struck me about it was how many women said, oh yeah, well, I seem to go to events like this when I travel for work, but I've never been to an event like this in San Francisco, which I thought was weird.
Yeah.
Because there's so many women who are doing rad stuff in San Francisco. And so I don't know, I just didn't expect that piece of feedback. I thought that was really interesting that was one of the things that they were like, wow, I've never, and you even heard a couple of people say that in the intros, like, wow, I'm going out in my own town, which feels weird.
Yeah.
So it was amazing, and you did a great job, and it was such a good vibe. So thanks for including me.
I'm so glad you were there. I'm fortunate because we've known each other for 15 years now, which is crazy.
Crazy.
Time flies. Your girls were very little and would run around the parking lot of dreams, and now they're all grown. We'll talk about that. Let's take a minute to go back to like early days Juliet. Actually, here's where we're going to start.
Hit me.
Last night at the dinner, you stood up and I asked everyone to talk about a memory of themselves from when they were 7 years old or earlier. And yours was about the very first time that your father took you out whitewater rafting.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, I forget the name of it, but I think they're like these moments that happen in your life that really just have like such a great impact in how you in your interests and where you find joy. And my dad was a funny 1970s scientist in Boulder, Colorado, and he and a bunch of his other scientist friends put together this like ragtag river trip, I will say. Nothing like what you'd think of as like a formal river trip. It was we actually were in canoes, so there were 2 people per canoe. And it was a 2-week wilderness trip, which is pretty serious. Like
how old?
I was 7,
God.
which is one of the reasons I love that question, because I really do have, I have such crystal clear memories of the whole trip. But I went on later to become a river guide, where we put on these really like exquisite trips with beautiful food, and we're rowing coolers down the river and people are drinking wine. And this was not that. This was like, we were eating Cheese Whiz. We didn't refrigerate anything. Like everything we ate was
noodles.
like ramen and freeze dried. And it was just very janky, this whole trip.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I loved the pace of being out there. I loved, this was obviously pre-technology, but I just loved being like out in deep nature with like no access to cars.
Yeah.
We went on all these amazing side hikes. We just slept outside every night. We didn't set up tents. We just slept on the ground, looking up at the stars. And so I feel like that was I always loved being outside. And because we grew up in Boulder, we did a lot of outdoor activities, but somehow that for me was like this moment where I was like, I love moving my body, being outside. And it's interesting because my brother was also on this trip, 3 years older than me. And I think he had a fine time, but that trip wasn't as impactful on him. He just doesn't share that interest. And for me, that was like just such a moment of being like, okay, no matter what I do in life, like I have to spend time outside moving my body.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Yes.
Whatever that means.
It was formidable for you.
Really formidable.
I call those core memories.
Yeah.
Which are just like, I think the core memories are from Inside Out, the movie Inside Out.
I love that movie.
Where like the big bubbles, it's like, oh, that's a core memory that's going.
It was just like unconditional joy that I experienced. Like, it was so nice. It's one of the great things about being a kid now that I'm a mom is like someone else is doing all the dealing for you. Right. So I just got to go and like be free and play in the mud and go down rapids and swim in the river and hike and swim in beautiful like grottos. And, so I just got to like fully experience the joy of it without dealing at all.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure it was a little more stressful for my dad.
Right. Right. So that was influential to you becoming an athlete, a professional athlete.
Yep.
And starting San Francisco CrossFit.
Yep.
So take us through that journey of you becoming a paddler. Is that what they call it?
Yep.
A paddler.
Yeah. So I ended up moving during high school to Long Beach, California, and I discovered the sport of rowing. And so
Near and dear to my heart.
Yep. I knew that. And so I rowed in high school and went on to row at Berkeley as a Division I athlete.
Oh, wow.
And I was always way too small for that sport. And so I had to always compensate for not being tall by being like super fit. Yeah. So I knew that I couldn't just like, be tall and sort of like semi-fit. Like the only way I could be on a level playing field at all is if I was like more fit than everybody else.
Right.
So I think that's where I really had to develop this love of like training, which I'm so glad I did because, I mean, obviously could have kept rowing my whole life, but I really did like fall in love with like training in the gym and being outside and, you know, figuring out how I could like push my limits from a fitness perspective, which I'm sure is why CrossFit appealed to me, you know, later on. And then at the same time as when I went to college, I became a river rafting guide in the summer, which obviously tracks given my sort of like love of the outdoors. But, you know, my 18-year-old mind was funny because I had been a camp counselor and worked in a restaurant. But I mean, my thinking when I was 18 or 19 and became a river guide was like, what job can I have where I can be outside, be tan, and like see cute boys? Like that was literally my 18. So it's like,
I love that brief.
It wasn't that like, you know, it wasn't some like I was called to do this thing. Like that was like my 19-year-old mind. Like I wanted to be tan.
You were called to get a tan.
I was called to get a tan. Let's be honest. Lisa and I actually always joke about how like we're still like we grew up at a time where like being tan felt so good and like we're so sad that we can't be tan because like
I have a girlfriend
being tan
who
feels
still
so good.
I have a friend who still goes to the tanning booth and I'm like, you know what? Own
It's
it.
real bad for you.
Like,
Yeah. It's
go
bad for
for
you,
it.
but just do it. Yeah. So anyway, I became a guide. And then after college, I was invited to try out for this weird fringe sport that is extreme whitewater paddling. It's like rafting with multiple sort of elements to it. There was a team in California. They held an open tryout. And I was like, I don't even know what that sport is. But whatever. Like I can pull hard from rowing. I have this fitness level.
Sure.
And then I also know how to run rivers because I've been a guide at this point for like 4 or 5 years. So I was like, okay, let me just go see. So I go down to this open tryout on the Kern River and there are like 40 women trying out. I had zero expectations. And then like a week later, they're like, you made the team. And then, you know, a month later, we're competing at the national championships, and 4 months later, we're at the world championships on the Zambezi River in Africa. So
That
it all
progressed
just was
quickly.
like this crazy whirlwind. But the cool thing is, and I knew from the beginning, I mean, of course I loved the training and the paddling and the competition because I love all that stuff. But I was also really aware of like, this is a chance for me to go like travel to some bonkers place on earth and bonkers places on earth, like on someone else's dime. Like we were, by the way, not really sponsored in any meaningful way, but like our travel to these races was paid for.
Oh, nice.
So we were able to go to Africa 2 times and Costa Rica and South America and, you know, all over the US. And so all that was covered. And then I was doing like weird odd jobs on the side. So after doing that for 5 years though, I was like, I'm kind of done being like extremely broke.
5 years. That's a long time. To do
And
that.
but it was like, you know, we weren't like, it wasn't all, you know, I still had to work. I had like jobs and, you know, I was doing various odd jobs.
Yeah.
But after 5 years of that, I was like, I'm tired of being critically broke. This is cool, but I don't want to be like a professional whitewater paddler for the rest of my life. So I went to law school.
Sure, as one does.
As one does.
A
It's just like, I'm going to go to law school. Yeah,
law school.
paddler to law school. I was kind of like law school bound in college, but then, you know, diverted over.
Yeah.
I went to law school. I got a job at a big, huge law firm called Reed Smith and started working there. And then really only 18 months or 2 years after I started at the law firm, I mean, not even that. I started officially at the law firm in 2003.
Okay.
And in 2004, Kelly and I discovered this weird thing called CrossFit. And at that point, you could easily have just been like, this is some weird neoconservative military cult. Like you'd go onto the CrossFit main site, all like military dudes and like police guys. And they're doing these like at the time, what seemed like totally insane workouts. And Kelly started doing some of them. We were like a member of Club One. Do you remember Club One? Remember that, gym?
Yes.
And that there was one in the city and one in Oakland. Like we'd go do CrossFit workouts at Club One in the Fillmore.
Oh my God.
Remember it was like down in the basement. I don't know if you're ever a member of that,
Yeah.
but I was like Club One. And, but it like something about CrossFit, and I know this is, I would be surprised if it wasn't this, you didn't also relate to this, but, especially as a former like kind of serious athlete, when I was in law school, I had this weird time where I didn't know like what I was doing with my physical health and my fitness. I was like, I'd go to the gym and I'd like Stairmaster and lift a weight and I'd run a little, like, I just didn't really feel like I had like a plan or purpose. And I was not like, I was still exercising because that's like who I was.
Right.
I was doing it, 4 or 5 days a week, but I wasn't into it. And then we found CrossFit and we're like, holy shit, we have like, even though we're both former professional athletes, like we have, and college athletes, like we have no skills. We're not really that fit.
It is humbling when you start to do these workouts and you're like, oh,
It was
like when you do a thruster for the first time, you're like, oh,
very humbling. And but what made the humbling also made it so interesting. Like
So
we were all
interesting.
bad at all of it.
I know.
All of us.
but it just made you want to go all the time.
Yeah, because you're like, oh my God, how can there be this many athletic skills that I'm horrible at and have years of room to grow. So I think that's what really appealed to us. So we just started doing it at Club One. We started having some friends of ours come over and do it in our backyard in the inner Richmond. And then we had this bonkers idea to like open up the gym in this parking lot. Again, at this point, just to kind of, I always like to point out to people, like, just because technology moves so quickly, how little technology and stuff and available stuff there was at that time. Like, we had to have this guy make like this static website for us. It was just like all our website was a photo and then our class schedule listed.
Right.
And then we could only accept checks or cash because there was no
payments.
mind body. There was no Zen, like whatever. There was no way.
There's no Apple Pay.
There was no Apple Pay. There was no whatever. We could swipe people's credit card with the old thing. Oh. So it just, because you think about now, you can't think about a world where you wouldn't just be able to like Apple Pay or whatever you do. You just can't even think about that. And not only that, but it was really hard to find gym equipment. The gym equipment there was no Rogue Fitness. We figured out this one random store in Santa Cruz that sold kettlebells and dumbbells, and we would drive down there to Santa Cruz and buy them. We had to like make like gymnastics rings out of these things we found at fishing. Like there just was you just think about like now if you started a gym, you'd be like, I'm going to order my whole kit from Rogue Fitness and I'm going to have this POS system for my customers and this is how they're going to sign up for classes and there's all this stuff. Yeah. None of that was there. So, but we also weren't really starting it as a business. Like we literally started it because we're like, this is cool. Yeah. We're having an amazing time doing these workouts. We love it. Like we're totally turned on. We're humbled on a daily basis. Yeah. So much to learn. We did feel like we were part of something emergent, which I'm sure you also felt.
Oh, for sure.
Like those early days, you were like, I'm part of an emergent thing, which felt fun and cool. And so we really did not start it at all to be a business. Like I was working as a lawyer and Kelly was a physical therapist. And, we didn't think about we didn't have a business plan or anything. Yeah. Like we were just like, this is a cool side. It was like a side gig for us. But then over time we were like, okay, there's kind of a there, and this is sort of a business. And like, maybe we need to create we started sort of realizing that. And then, in turn, Kelly first left his physical therapy job, brought his physical therapy clinic into the parking lot, as you know. And then I think in 2009, I left my law practice and then was running the mobility WOD and gym at that time. Yeah. So it was fun. And I will say, I'd love to get your thoughts after being involved in the early thing, but people are so funny. They really still have such like strong feelings. It's like since the beginning, people have had strong feelings about CrossFit. Like when it first came out, it was like a neoconservative military cult. And then the whole thing was like, you're just going to get injured. Like human beings can't do those moves. Right. And then over time, not for good reason, the organization has taken a lot of hits.
Right. Yes.
Whatever. But what I think is so interesting is we're now in this phase where, there's this big push for women to strength train. And there's, women are now showing up at gyms asking about strength training. And so many people in my own community ask me like, okay, I need to start lifting weights. What should I do? And like, honestly, my answer today is still go to a CrossFit gym. Yeah. Like if you want to go do machines at your gym and kind of get like mediocre weight training, fine. But like if you actually want to learn how to lift a weight properly and get coaching and be involved in a real strength program, like CrossFits are still the place to do that. And CrossFit coaches are pretty skilled at it. Yeah. And especially after all these years and they've, anyway, so we haven't owned a CrossFit in a long time. We closed it in 2020. Yeah. But I still think from like a weightlifting and general fitness perspective, like I really haven't seen a program that is better. And
it's because it's a program. Right. And so for most people, it's like you can't dabble in and out of that. Like you can't just show up once a week. Right. It's not, one, you will get injured. Doesn't matter because like if you're just showing up once a week to do some random things, that's not going to do you any good. Right. And two, what I will give you guys credit for, because I'm not sure every CrossFit gym is like this. you guys train well. You train the coaches well who trained the members well. Because there is a world where there are some CrossFit coaches where it's like,
right.
Who trained you?
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge, right? It was a bit of a free-for-all, and all these CrossFits opened. And so I think people did struggle to be like, okay, there were so many good ones and there were some bad ones. And so it was always hard to balance that. But you're right. It's like, we were so focused on teaching people how to move well and understanding the mechanics and teaching them to care.
Yeah.
And also teaching people that like, you got to modify, like maybe everybody can't do like.
You have to modify. Like you're going to get injured when you try and go hero mode.
Yeah.
Like there's no hero mode.
No.
So there's a couple things. One, I take great pride, and I think most members do, in saying they were part of San Francisco CrossFit.
Yeah.
Because you created such a beautiful community. And maybe it was because you never saw it as a business in the early days.
Yeah.
That you allowed that community to be created. But I had just moved to San Francisco. I didn't know many people. I was trying to figure out my workout situation. I was before a spin instructor, so I would like go teach spin at Equinox several days a week. And I found it, and it was my home. Like I went every day, not just because I wanted to work out. It's because like on my Saturday mornings, I wanted to go hang out with my friends.
Yeah.
I did like 2 classes a day on Saturdays just because all my friends were there.
Right. You just hang out. Yeah.
And it has held true. Like I live in Austin now, and one of my dear friends was also at San Francisco CrossFit, and we figured it out when we met. We're like, wait, were you in the pod? He was like, I was in the pod. I was like, what?
Yeah.
So
I think there's like there's something, because I don't know how many of us were in the pod.
Yeah.
Parking Lot of Dreams.
Well, I was going, by the way, I went through old photos to like.
Oh yeah. And I mean, let's just say over that 7 years we were in the pod, maybe there were like 500 people who touched that space, but that's not that many people. And I do feel like, I feel like especially those early days, people like there's a real sense of pride of being involved in that. And I feel that too. I think the other thing about it is you could never have that gym today. Like it was in like a dirt pile, and we were doing our burpees next in like a glass would be broken. And it just like the world is different. Like people wouldn't accept that. I don't think today is a thing. I do think you're right, because we were never, for the first many years, we were not trying to run it as a business at all. And I think that did really help it grow organically. Yeah. Because, we could make, and for a lot of it, we could make decisions for the right reasons. Mm-hmm. I mean, even after we like moved into a space and the gym got formalized a little bit, Kelly and I were still already running our other company. Mm-hmm. So like we barely,
which by the way, what we're going to talk about,
it's called Mobility WOD. Yep. It started off as Mobility WOD, started in like 2008, 2009, but, we didn't really pay ourselves ever that much out of the gym. Like if I look over time, over running a gym for almost 20 years, or a little, like it was like 17 and a half years we ran the gym, I think. We really took very little income from the gym. We always would just, A, try to pay our coaches really well, and then B, try to sort of funnel money back into the business as much as we could. Yeah. And then we were able to kind of pay for our own life from our other business. Mm-hmm. And I have to think that made a difference in the community piece. Yeah. I mean, I don't know exactly how, but I think you're right.
I think so too.
Yeah.
What's also foundational to how I think about moving, which I just talked about on this week's episode with Mel Strong, is you and Kelly taught us the importance of mobility, not just strength.
Yeah.
So the first 10 to 15 minutes of every class was opening your hips, or I'd be like, Kelly, my back hurts. And he'd be like, his PT world, he'd be like, okay, lay down. He would like do this thing. He'd be like, okay, you're good to go. I'm like, okay, awesome. I probably would have had to go make a PT appointment to get that done.
Yeah.
And still to this day, I open my hips before I do any form of workout. Like it's a language.
Yeah.
And so part of why I had you on is because you're an amazing breadwinner and I love what you've built, but you're also an expert in movement. And I think it's really important for women to understand the importance of movement, no matter what stage of life you're in. So whether you're 20 and nimble, or whether you're going through perimenopause and trying to figure out what the hell's going on with my body.
Yeah.
Talk to me about why you and Kelly feel that is so important. Like I've experienced it, but like I would love to talk about the importance of movement, and we'll get to your book and what you guys have created.
Yeah, I mean, I would give a lot of credit to Kelly on this and his own education as a physical therapist. You know, he just became obsessed with movement and mechanics and teaching people not just to move, but to move well and to care about that. Yeah. And it turns out that you can't just smash yourself from a workout perspective and not do any maintenance on the body, that you need to do some maintenance in the form of mobility and, you know, recovery and all the other things that you can do on the periphery. So I think we just became obsessed with that concept and intermixed it into the gym. And I think it also worked because Kelly brought his physical therapy clinic into the gym. And we were really like the first people to do that. That's now really common. I don't know how often you notice that, but I'm always like, I feel like kind of a sense of pride that like we were like the first people to say, hey, like the physical therapy person should be right there. And there should be this sort of common language. I love that you use the word language of movement. And that in any long life of training, anyone who's going to decide that they're someone who wants to move their body for life is going to have tweaks and aches and pains and injuries. But that we also realize that if you want to be able to move your body, you do have to do some basic maintenance. You have to kind of understand how your body works. I need to pay attention to that. I will say, having worked in this like mobility space for so long, it is hard to get people to care, right? Most people who find us now, with Mobility WOD was rebranded to the Ready State some years ago. Most people who find us, they find us because they can no longer do the thing they love to do physically, or they're in pain. And we've been trying to spread this message for years, like do it first. Like, not that that doesn't mean you won't ever get injured or that you won't ever experience pain, you know, but like there are a lot of things you can avoid if you actually do some maintenance on your body. So that's kind of always been our submission. And I also think it's part of the reason why, our CrossFit was so successful, because I think people could hear in the background like, oh, CrossFit's injuring people, but they'd be like, not mine. Right. Because I'm learning to move here. And I do think we set the standard for a lot of CrossFits of saying like, hey, the way we can differentiate ourselves in a crazy, you know, boutique fitness was spawned out of CrossFit. And this, as it started to get more competitive, I was always like, the way that we can differentiate ourselves as a business is coaching. Yeah. Like coach people, teach them to move well. So even if they stop doing CrossFit and move into whatever program, they carry that strong understanding of mechanics and movement language to whatever it is they do. Even spinning. Like even spinning has some technique in it. Yes, right?
It does. And you can get injured. I've seen people, I mean, I won't name names of brands, but like I've gone into spin studios and I'm like, all of you are going to get injured. Like, what is happening here? Like, this is not safe.
Right.
You're paying $30 a class.
Yeah. You're like, exactly. Like you gotta care. You've got to do some maintenance on your body. I mean, that's just, it's a hard sell because everybody's busy and I get it. If I only have an hour a day, like I want to train. Right. I don't want to be like rolling around on the floor on a ball or whatever. Like, that's not how I want to spend my time.
Let's break this down for someone who's like, man, I don't know talk to me about maintenance. Like, where would you start with maintenance?
Man, I mean, that's a great question. Where to start? I think I would start by sort of appreciating that you can't like operate as a human without doing any maintenance. Like, I feel like it's like, imagine when you're born, like you're gifted, like what's your dream car? Like if you could get a car, what would be your dream car? Like if God. I don't know, like
bad question.
No, you're not into cars, but like
so not into cars.
Okay,
like, I don't know.
Like imagine you're born and your parents give you one car and you have to that's the only car you get your entire life. Like that's I think how you want to think about your body. Yeah. So if you only got one car, you would always change the oil on it and you'd make sure to keep it clean and you would do regular checkups on it and you'd make sure, right? And I don't think we often take that same approach with our bodies. No. We just sort of think, okay, well I can, especially when you're young and you feel invincible and you can trash yourself and you know you can go out drinking till 2 a.m. and then be at your 6 a.m. CrossFit class and like somehow you can do that, right?
I definitely did that.
Yeah. And so you can do that when you're young. And so I think that demotivates people to want to do maintenance. But like one of the ways that we describe mobility and is that imagine like when you're young, your mobility is like a wide open, like double wide hallway in a like a hospital. You know, hospital hallways are like extra wide. Like imagine that's your mobility when you're young.
Yeah.
And your body, like you can, get injured and bounce back quickly, and you don't feel like you need enough sleep, and your body's like plastic, right? But then as you get older, you start to see that hallway starts to narrow, and the way that you start to see it in your 30s is like, most of your friends who used to be able to run in their 20s, like can't run anymore. Like they switched to biking.
Yep. Also me.
Yeah, right. Like me too. And, so you start to see ways in which you and the people around you, like their movement choice starts to get limited. Starts adapting.
Yeah. Adapting to pain. Like, let's be clear.
Adapting to pain. You start adapting. Yeah. You're just like, okay. Or at some point you're like, okay, I love running, but I don't need to be an 8 out of 10 pain every time I go for a run. I'm switching to biking, whatever it is. So, but what's interesting about mobility is unlike some of these other features of aging, like you probably are going to lose some of your muscle mass and some of your bone density as you age. Like you actually don't have to lose your mobility. If you look at people in cultures where they like sit on the ground and squat, mostly Asian cultures, toilet on the ground, sleep on the ground, they have so many fewer orthopedic injuries than we do, because they're just taking their joints through full range of motion all the time, getting up and down off the ground, squatting down all the time. So some of that maintenance is built into their daily lives in ways that it isn't for us. So unfortunately, if you want to have a body that can keep doing the things that you love, and I don't care whether that's dance or pickleball or hiking or I don't care what it is, you got to do a little bit of maintenance. Like this is your car.
Yeah.
Your one car.
So you guys have 10 vital signs that you talk about. Yeah. What's number one for you in the 10?
I mean, number one for me is still the sit and rise test.
I can't.
Yeah, I know. I can only do it like 50% of the time. I have to be like working.
It's really hard.
It's really hard.
So so explain the sit.
So the sit and rise test is based on a 2017 study done by a combo of British and American researchers, and they developed this test. And I'll just describe it, where you start standing and you cross your feet at the ankles and you lower yourself slowly to the ground under control. And then the idea is you then stand back up from that same cross-legged position that you found yourself in. And it's scored out of 10. So each time you put a knee or a hand down, you lose a point.
I thought you just couldn't use your hands.
No, so you just lose a point. So you may not be because I can always get a 9 out of 10, no matter what. Even when I'm stiff, I can use one hand to push myself up, and that's still a 9 out of 10.
Okay.
But in the study, people who got an 8 out of 10 or less, it was associated with like lower, like, it was connected to your mortality, basically. And so the theory behind that is just that, we need to be able to keep moving through our environment. Again, like I said, you've got to be able to get up and down off the ground. The number one reason people end up in nursing homes is they can't get up after they've fallen.
Right.
And so this is just a foundational skill. But what I like about it is the test is kind of fun to do and try, and it's hard. It's really hard. But you can get better at it. That's the other reason I like it.
Train.
Yeah, you can train for it and practice. And the way you practice is just sitting on the floor a lot.
Which is very uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable because we don't do it anymore.
Yeah. Should we be sitting on the floor for this interview?
I mean, we should. It's funny. We just moved the studio around. We used to have this kind of desk where we were like sort of a standing desk, but we were on these stools. But we decided to switch it to sitting because we wanted to feel like a little more informal and whatever. But we were like, okay, like, would there be a way we could do like a floor-based podcast? But it's a little complicated.
It is a little
to like get cameras down there and stuff. But anyway, so what I love about the test is it's simple and easy to do. You can get better at it by sitting on the floor on the regular and by getting up and down off the floor every so often. And it's just, I think what I like about it also is that most people don't care about their mobility. They don't know to care.
Yeah.
And then they do this test and they realize like, oh my God, when I was a kid, I could get up and down and comfortably sit on the floor. And this is like, they can immediately see how much range of motion and mobility they've lost, even at however old they are.
Right.
So I just think it's like the most quick and easy revealing test about sort of where you are. And it really is sort of a test of your hip mobility more than anything else, like your big mover, your big movers. So yeah, I like that. As from a mobility perspective, that's my favorite vital sign.
Because the other ones are like, okay, 8 to 10,000 steps a day. Like those are kind of fortunately becoming more of the norm of like everyone is like, oh yeah, I should be walking more. And like my Aura Ring reminds me to stand up. It's like time to stretch your legs. But I think what's important is, and I'll mention in the show notes like what the 10 vital signs are. But I think what's important is, sure, you should get up and stretch your legs, but get up and stretch your legs and stretch your hips. Like don't just get up and walk to the kitchen.
Right.
Or when you're outside playing with your kids in the backyard, like do some squats.
Do some air squats.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also all this amazing research now coming out of Stanford and other organizations about like the importance of what they call movement snacks and how those count. We have this program we run for adults that are like 40 to 70. It's a coaching program. It's like a virtual strength and conditioning lifestyle longevity program. But we do live coaching in the form of coaching calls with folks. And what I've seen in the program, one of the things has been a takeaway. We've been doing it for like a year and a half now. Is that many people who join our program suffer from an all or nothing mindset. And I think this is really common for a lot of people when it comes to their health and fitness, is that we've trained people to think that it has to happen in an hour class, that like, that's what exercising means. Like you have to do it for at least an hour.
Yeah. You have to break a sweat.
You got to break a sweat. There's just a lot. People have a lot of closely held views that I think are incorrect. And we spend a lot of time in our coaching program actually breaking down people's like closely held opinions or feelings. And one of those things is that, the goal for humans is to move a lot throughout the day, not like work out for an hour and sit all day. Working out for an hour is great. Yes, you need to do that, but human beings need to be moving all the time.
Sure.
But there's so many ways to do that and it can all count. And, we love walking because it's easy and accessible to most people, but a lot of people can't have a standing desk at work. So get up and do some air squats or do the hip opener or, just move there's so many ways to move your body.
Frequency throughout the day.
Yeah. And the research is really showing that it does add up. It counts. So this notion that like you need to work out all in a row too, like we do have strengthening, like our workouts in the Starrett system program that we run are an hour roughly, or an hour and 10 minutes. But we tell our people, we're like, hey, if you're jammed for time, do the warm up and do part A of the workout. Yeah. And like, feel good about that. Like it's okay.
Right. You did something. And like, that's, it turns out that it adds up. Yeah. And so that's one of the things that I have found to be really interesting in like having to kind of coach people out of their point of view on is that, all this little movement, it counts and it works. Yeah. I would challenge the community for all of us to try the sit to rise and like mark your numbers. Yeah. And like try once a week, try a couple times a week. Yeah. And like just start tracking.
And the homework to get better at it is we always tell everyone to sit on the floor for 30 minutes a day. And everyone's like, what? And I'm like, okay, if you work from home, like sit on the floor at your coffee table for half an hour a day. Or we know everyone's watching TV at night. We sit on the floor most of the time while we watch TV, like just right in front of our couch. But you'd be surprised how just that thing, which is sitting on the floor, which ultimately is pretty passive and pretty easy to do. Sure. And just getting comfortable sitting on the floor really can help you improve at that test. So,
well, I find that, my kids are little. So like when
you're on the floor, probably
you're on the floor. And that's where I find like the cricks and pains, like sitting in crisscross, like really hurts my left hip. And I'm like, okay, well that means I probably should be sitting in this position more or getting more movement, but it exposes the uncomfortable.
Move that forward in time. We had Ben Bergeron on our podcast, and he was telling a story about how when his kids were little, like his wife's mom came to visit and his mom came to visit. And I can't remember who was who, but one of them had really not taken care of her health well and couldn't comfortably sit on the floor. And then the other mom could. And he said how interesting it was, how much more interaction with the grandchild, the mom who was mobile a little bit could have with the grandchild, could just get up and down off the floor and play with the kid on the ground. And that the other grandmother could really just like hold the baby in a chair. Yeah. And just what a contrast that was. Yeah. Right.
It is. I've seen that in my own family. Fortunately, my dad has lost a lot of weight, but years ago when he didn't have any mobility, he couldn't get down on the ground to play with the kids. And one time I said to my sisters, I'm like, Dad can't even get down on the ground. Right. Now he can, fortunately, because he is, it's amazing. He's in his mid 70s and like is the healthiest I've ever seen him. Right. but he's actually taking care of his body.
Well, and what I love about that story is, and it's like a message we try to say, is like, it's never too late, especially when it comes to your mobility. Like it really isn't like, I had a horrible ankle sprain. I've had some issues. Like I'm never going to have like perfect ankle mobility, but like, it's also never, you really can regain a lot of lost mobility. And you can and should be able to maintain a lot of your mobility until the day you die. And I love hearing that about your dad, because it really is true. Like you can, a lot of people can really trash their bodies, and then for whatever happens in their life that makes them want to change their ways, can get back to this point where like, how cool about your dad?
I know.
Like, that's amazing.
That's great. I want to change topics a bit, because to your point, I remember your two daughters when they were like tiny, running around the gym, and now they're teenagers, which, hold on, by the way, I have a present for you. I was going through old photos.
Oh my God. That's amazing. Look at that. And then Georgia has her like CrossFit band on.
I know.
Right there.
I know. It's like
thank
this
you so much.
beautiful
So
photo of the
cute.
two of them. That was
And
at the
that's
CrossFit Games.
Field. It was at the games.
It was at the games.
Wow.
Yeah.
The one that was down in Aromas.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But I was going through old CrossFit photos and I came across that.
This is
And like,
so
that's how I
amazing.
remember them.
Yeah. They still look exactly like this, but big.
I know.
This is so, thank you for this.
Yeah.
I love it.
So you and Kelly have been running a business together for over 20 years and raising a family. What's that impact look like on your kids? And now that you have teenagers, like, what is that dynamic like in your household?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I'm glad about having like left my law practice to go be an entrepreneur and stuff is, I mean, honestly, in the end, I probably would have made way more money if I just stayed doing what I was doing in the law practice, but that was never the goal. Right. But I really wanted to have like a level, I knew when my kids especially were little, but even now, like have a level of flexibility in my work. So honestly, I probably like I've worked more hours wise as an entrepreneur than I probably would have even as a billable hour attorney.
Yeah.
But in flexible ways, like our kids went to a school where like when they were in band, they'd have their band concert at like 11 a.m. on a Wednesday, and it's like, if I was at my law firm job in San Francisco, like I would, so there were ways in which I was able to like have my life be, at least I could choose and plan my own schedule that mattered a lot to me. So I think that was one really big bonus. I mean, the path of running a business is up and down, and we've had tons of periods of stress, which my kids have witnessed. So, I don't know whether that means they'll like run for the hills and never want to run their own business, or whether whether that, they kind of see it, but they've been part of it. Like we always have like a whiteboard in the garage and we talk,
So you talk through it with them. I guess that's one of my things.
Yeah, we do.
Like, what have they seen? What have you talked about with them?
And the thing is like you see, like kids see and notice everything. Like, even when they were little, like when we would have issues or something with an employee, like, they were aware of it, because not only were we would of course be talking about it at home. So they were aware of it. And then, I'm sure they were aware of like periods of time where we were more stressed and less stressed. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see for me what they do with their lives and whether they're like, dude, entrepreneur. Because, it's funny. I had a friend's kid who said to me a couple of years ago, he was like just graduating from high school in Marin, and he goes, it's so awesome. Like 80% of my friends in my class want to be entrepreneurs. And I literally laughed to myself, because I'm like, I actually only think like 10% of people or less should be entrepreneurs.
Oh, 100%.
Like it is not for everybody at all.
It is not for the faint of heart.
No, it's not for everybody. So, so I always thought that was funny, because I was like, no,
good luck.
No, yeah, that's no, it's just not for everybody. So I'm super curious to see, and I actually would love to interview them.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
I would love to ask them that question. Like, what has it been like for you guys to witness this, and like what are your takeaways from it? Part of it will just be interesting to see what they do, whether they have even the slightest desire to do anything entrepreneurial or not. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Talk to us about your partnership with Kelly, because like it's like you and Kelly all the time. Like
Kelly,
gym, ready state, parenting.
Always.
Like where do you have your moments where you're like, I need a minute?
Yeah, Lisa can bear witness. Like, sometimes we get real annoyed with each other. But like, I will say a couple things. Like, ultimately, we really get along well. like most of the time. And, you know, I feel like maybe we've kind of set it up so it's like 51-49 and I'm sort of the ultimate decider on like real big important things. At some point someone has to be that person, and that's usually me. So I think that helps a little bit. And the other thing too is from a skill perspective, we are so different. Like I think that also is what makes it possible, right? Like Kelly's comfort zone is, you know, like talking on camera, and you know, he's so talented at that and so charismatic, and he loves coaching and teaching and kind of being in front of a room, and I can do that, but I'm not as comfortable in that space as he is. Like I can be on Instagram videos and stuff, but like, like it's not as natural for me. Like I'm like dying the whole time. And you know, but he's not like that sort of organized in many ways, right? So we do balance each other out well, I think, in an important way. So I think that's another reason why it works. And then the other point I always make to people is like, look, are you married to someone? Because if you're married, like ultimately, like Kelly and I are in an expanded marriage, but still it's not that different from how you have to negotiate a marriage. Right. Because in a marriage, you're still talking about finances and kids and plans and travel, and right. So we're doing all that, but also in a work context. So now for us, it would be weird if we didn't work together. Like it would be weird if he went to work and I went to work and we met back up at home. And we're like, how was your day? Like that would be weird.
So you haven't known anything different.
It's exactly. Like, I mean, since I was practicing law, like we haven't known anything different. So, so it's almost seems like I can't imagine a world where we don't work together. So
that's so great.
So it's been fun. It's fun. And we're lucky. Like, I don't know that it would work for everybody.
No, I'm pretty sure
it wouldn't work for a lot of people.
I don't think most people could do that.
And, you know, we like, you know, we've tried all sorts of things too. Like we tried for a while. We're like, we're not going to talk about business at home, but like that didn't work for us at all. You know,
that's just not realistic.
No, trying to create those rules. I mean, we're not going to sit there at 9:00 at night and talk about like stressful work stuff. So we do have a boundary there. Like we're not going to we're not making decisions or doing whatever, but like, we also feel like we've tried to always like our business and our personal life have always been intertwined, both at the gym and in, you know, like, like we have people that are work related at our house for dinner all the time. And like, we just really, so creating these kind of like strict rules of like, this is how we can, didn't work for us at all.
Well, it's one of the topics that comes up a lot in the Breadwinners in these conversations is this integration of life and work, or however you want to define work. Because the balance is bullshit thing is very real. It's like there is no balance. You just have to integrate it all. So I think that's right. Whatever that looks like for you, you take elements of work and you bring it into your home, and you take elements of your home and you bring it into work. And there's no balance. I mean, I don't think you really can, and especially not if you're on any kind of like entrepreneurial journey, because I really am such a believer, especially in like early stages of growing a company or a brand or whatever you're doing, like you kind of like have to say yes to everything because you don't know what is going to make a difference. And so if you get real precious about your schedule and making your whatever, like I think it's going to be a struggle to grow from nothing. I mean, you can, I think, say no more often once you're established, and you can create more of those boundaries. But, you know, we still say yes more than we say no, for sure. I think that's a really important frame of mind to have. Really, I mean, you guys are 20, you're established. People know you. And the fact that you still have that mentality, I think is a really great piece of advice. It's like, you are not bigger than the things that you don't feel are as important. Like, say yes to those things.
And even like we were talking about this podcast thing, you know, like, you know, we go on a lot of podcasts where they have like 7 listeners, right? And people are, you know, and sometimes I'm like, maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe that's not a good use of our time or whatever. But then you also see like, there are these huge podcasts like Huberman and Ferris and all these things, you know, that just can take a big swing if you're trying to sell a book or do some whatever. But then you also see there's all these podcasts, I think, often represent these little amazing sub communities who are really dedicated. So you just never know. Like, so for me saying, so like when it comes to podcasts, you know, we do sometimes say no just from a timing or we're overwhelmed or whatever standpoint, but like, you just never know. You never know what will come of something.
We talked a little bit last night at the dinner about this redefinition of breadwinning and kind of reclaiming like an outdated term. What does breadwinning look like for you? and what you've been through and how you've raised your family?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's been like making sure the family's at the core of everything. And I think we're lucky to work together. And as we said, everything's integrated, but how are these business decisions going to impact our family and our, ability to spend time with our kids? Like, one of the best pieces of advice I got when I was my kids were little, I was still working as a lawyer, and this other lawyer said to me, because I think I was going through the classic thing where I'm like, oh my God, I think I'm sucking at being a lawyer, and I'm definitely sucking at being that constant thing we all experience. Like,
I'm laughing because we've all lived it.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
I'm not doing anything well.
No, you're just like, you're doing it, but you're not doing anything well. Yeah. Like, I had that moment of like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing here? And she said, this was so helpful to me, because she said, here's the deal. When your kids are little, she's like, they need like to be fed and loved and someone to hold them and care for them. And that person doesn't need to be you. And that doesn't mean that you will be not bonded to your kid. She's like, I'm not saying ignore your kid, but like at this time when they're little, like this is when you can continue to like build your career and take advantage of childcare, and you will still be fully bonded with your kid. Like, don't worry about that. But she's like, but then you really want to create a universe where your life is flexible when your kids are especially in high school. Like, my friend TJ of TJ's Gym, another local CrossFit, he told me his kids are a little bit older than me. And he said he watched this phenomenon when his daughters they're now both in, like, one's still in college and one's out of college. But when he noticed this phenomenon in high school where it's like, a lot of parents took their foot off the parenting gas in like 10th grade, because your kids start to get pretty independent. Like, they can drive, they're doing a lot of stuff on their own. You've kind of become like their executive assistant as much as a parent than anything else.
Oh my God, you totally become their executive assistant.
Yeah. Oh, that's like what
their chef. And
your chef, executive assistant. But I think a lot of parents like take their foot off the gas, and it's like, to me, that's like, okay, you've run a marathon, but you stop running like 2 miles before the end. But the thing is like in high school, and in that critical phase of life, like that's when your kids can actually make decisions that mess up their whole life.
Right.
And he's like, that's actually the time where you want to be like around. So he's like, develop your career, work hard, take advantage of childcare when your kids are little.
Yeah.
And then have a career or setup so that when your kids are in high school, like you are fully present, and be present.
What does that look like? What does be present look like?
That just means like you're around the house, you are involved in what they're doing, you show up to their stuff. You're just present. You're around the house. You're not always gone.
Right.
You aren't always taking like mom's weekends, and, like you aren't just taking advantage of like freedom a little bit. Like you are around and present for them, so that when they come home, and they're tired and need to talk, you're available and present. Like, just kind of be around.
Yeah.
And I think that was such an important piece of advice to me, because it really helped me at that time, because I was in that phase of like, oh my God, I'm like, doing everything terribly.
Right.
It helped me a little bit with my mindset there.
Yeah.
And then I do think, we've been able to really be present for our kids' high school times.
That's nice.
Because we have flexibility in when we can work, and, we work near home and all those things. So yeah, I think like setting yourself up so you can like run the full marathon of parenting until the end. I think
really
is
good
important.
advice. They do say little kids, little problems, and big kids, big problems.
Yep. I think.
What's the thing with having 2 teenage girls that you didn't expect, where you're like, whoa, this is hard?
Man, first of all, I want to start by saying, and I talked to a couple of the women at the dinner last night who had younger kids. I was like, I am obsessed with teenagers. I love them. Like for me, teenagers are awesome. And all my, like, I love
That's so
all
nice to hear.
my friends' kids, like Lisa's daughter, Ren. She's almost 20, but like, is she almost 20, Lisa? Yeah. So, but still, she's still a teenager.
Yeah.
Like, they are funny and creative and like kind of all over the place a little bit, but they're like fun to hang around, but you can really talk to them. And I don't know. I just think like teenagers get a bad rap. I think they're awesome.
Yeah.
And like everyone should look forward to having teenagers, because I think they're the best.
Yes.
Like so I start by saying I love teenagers.
That's awesome.
And maybe that helped me get through my high school. Because the other thing too is you have to like understand how their brain works. Like you can't get mad. Like one thing I read this amazing book called The Teenage Brain, which I totally recommend to any parent to read, like before your kids become teenagers, called The Teenage Brain. And you read this book and you realize like they're everything they're doing is textbook. Like they all lie.
Right.
And if you spend your life getting mad about your teenager lying about stupid stuff, like your life's going to suck and you're going to have a nonstop conflict with your kid. Like, and they lie about stupid stuff. Like you say, hey, did you start your laundry? And they're like, I did. And then you go in their room and their laundry's on the floor and you're like,
the washing machine's not running.
Yeah. And I'm like, dude, save your lies for like something big, like that
Pick
matters.
a good one.
Yeah. I'm like, make a good one. But, so I just think you have to kind of understand where they are in life. And, but I will say with girls, I feel like 9th, 10th grade is hard for girls. Like that's a difficult time. And I don't really know why developmentally, but it seems like that's when friendships are changing and girls can be mean. Yeah. And so I think it's just hard to like be witness to that. But it is just, I don't know any teenage girl who hasn't had like a, something kind of difficult in that time. So I think the 9th, 10th grade is hard for girls.
How do you like the witness to that? Because I don't know what I would do. Like watching your daughter go through a friendship change. Like, do you sit back and like not get involved? Like, how do you support them?
I mean, when that's happened to my kids, I've just tried to be like a counselor, an advisor, and supporter.
Yeah.
So I definitely don't just like let it happen. But I mean, man, I have lost so much sleep over. And that's actually something I regret. When I look back, especially when my kids are younger, like the things I lost sleep over, I'm like, I know my friends, like they were fine. So, but I just think that's part of being a mom.
Right.
You just like worry.
Like, you have to live it.
Live it and worry. But yeah, it is really hard when your kid, and I know this is true for a lot of my friends, is struggling socially or kids are being rude or mean or whatever. It's really like you take it personally as a mom. So you hold it and like you kind of start like hating their mom, even though you've been friends with their mom forever. Like it creates
it's like all this innate like trigger.
It's very. So it's really difficult, but I think, you just like have to counsel your kids and just be supportive and try to just like help them get through those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like weird girlfriend things are the worst.
It's like,
because girls can be mean.
It also, I'm sure, is like a little PTSD where like probably for me, it would like bring up old stuff of like what you went through. And it's like, well, I don't want to project the stuff I went through.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
yeah, I just think you have to give like, especially like 9th and 10th grade girls, like long grace, a lot of grace. They need a lot of grace.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
I would love to see your breadwinner artifacts.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I'll start with the one I'm wearing.
Yes.
And the timing on this was good because Kelly and I were cleaning out our closet and I have this like sort of like bin of like saved t-shirts that I want to save forever.
Yeah.
So my first one is the first ever sole single print San Francisco CrossFit t-shirt.
One and only.
The one and only. We only made one and we made it at this t-shirt print shop on the Haight in San Francisco. And I literally do not know why there's a deer on it.
I was like, what is that?
I don't remember.
Is that the mascot?
No, and I have to actually, Kelly's traveling today, so I can't ask him. But I do need to find out, like, why did we put a deer on it? Like, it does not track at all. My artifact number 2 is that hippo over there. This story, it's probably too long of a story for this podcast.
Okay. What's the Cliff Notes?
The Cliff Notes are, I was competing at my first Whitewater World Championship on the Zambezi in Africa. And afterwards, my teammates and I went on I don't know the days, maybe a week-long canoe safari on a different section of the river.
Okay.
And my canoe, me and my teammate Brooke Winger, our canoe was attacked by a hippo.
No way.
Yes, and we were thrown into the water.
Oh, that's a thing.
It's a thing, and we had to swim to shore. But it was the late 90s, so there was no cell phones and no way out, and we had to our guide had to get and we were thrown into water with tons of hippos around and crocodiles everywhere, and so it was very touch and go. Like we were able to swim to shore and obviously survived. But so that's ever
Dude,
since
I thought
then,
this was a cute hippo story.
No. So ever since then, I have been receiving hippos as gifts from people, and I have a hippo shrine in my house. And I have hippos of all, like I have a crystal hippo and a metal, like I have all these hippos. So people have been giving me hippo, like little hippo figurines my whole life. So I just brought one of them. So that's that. And then my third artifact I wanted to bring, because I thought about bringing an old like mobility tool, but I instead was like, I want to just bring Built to Move, our book, only because it's the most recent thing. And the thing about it that I think I'm the most proud is that it was, we always were definitely sort of speaking more to like athletes and coaches and physical therapists. And I felt like it was the first time we wrote this book where like you could hand it to your mom, or you could hand it to people who don't care about athletics, but want to feel healthy or feel good in their body. So I felt like it was the first time we were really able to like expand our message beyond, people who consider themselves athletic or who are drawn to health and fitness and wellness, and say, okay, everybody has a body. And doesn't matter what your interests are, like you got to move your body. Yeah. And here's a way to think about it that's pretty accessible. So that's my third artifact.
What was the most unexpected thing when you finished writing the book that you didn't expect?
Man, I think I wasn't sure it would work, because that was our goal. Our goal was to write kind of our first mass market book. Like, could we, all of our other books were a little niche. Yeah. Or a lot niche.
Supple leopard niche.
Yeah. So our books were a little or a lot niche. Yeah. And I just wasn't sure. I was like, can we break out? And we worked, in fact, one of the challenges when we were writing the book is like, we kept saying to ourselves, and we had a co-writer help us with it, is this just too simple? Like, this seems so obvious. Like, is this overly simple? And it was so great. We had a co-writer because she is, she's a writer and she likes to move her body, but she was such a good counterpoint to us. Especially Kelly can get real technical when it comes to, you know how he is. He can get real technical. Right. And so, I think I was proud of the fact that we were able to say, like, really say, you know what? No, like, simple is better. Yeah. People need to hear simple, and it works, and it works. And it's the other thing that's cool is like that book came out in 2023. We really wrote it in 2022 because of the way books write, because it takes a whole year.
Yeah. So it was in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah, it was like right at that, middle right at the end of the pandemic. So I feel like it's what I love seeing is that people are still discovering it and sharing it and talking about it. So that's been cool.
It's timeless.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah.
Like that can sit on your bookshelf and you can read it at any time.
Yeah, exactly.
I ask this question to every guest. What legacy do you want to leave, either to the world at large or for your children?
Well, for the world at large, at least professionally, I think Kelly and I have really zeroed in on this idea that is not sexy and it's not a way to make money, but really zeroing in on just helping people figure out how to master the basics in their life. Because you also enjoy this space as I do, that it's just out of control. Like, there's so much information. There's too much information. Some of it's fun. Some of it can be useful. And we certainly need people who are going to try the moonshots like Brian Johnson and see what sort of weird stuff we can learn about the body or whatever. But like for 95% of us, we just need to sleep, eat some vegetables, have friends, maybe take care of our bodies, do some strength and conditioning training, go outside. And we just need to get good at doing those things on repeat. Yeah. So I hope that Kelly and I can continue to sort of be this like reasonable voice in an unreasonable universe. Yeah. So that's sort of one legacy. I hope we can just continue to be that voice. And for my kids, I do think, Kelly and I, raising my kids here in Marin at the time we did, like, I think my kids had so much more privilege than either one of us did. Like, we were both raised by single moms and just like they've had a different kind of childhood. So, so I do have a sort of sense that while I want them to do whatever they want to do, I do think they also have a responsibility given the sort of amount of privilege they've had both living and educationally and how much they've been able to travel around the world. So, so I do hope, I hope at least we've instilled in them that, they should do something with their life that helps other people. Like Kelly and I feel like we've helped people feel good in their bodies and get out of pain and, rethink their relationship with health and fitness and, let go of an all or nothing mindset. We feel like we've helped a lot of people sort of around movement and bodies. Yeah. And I just hope they figure out a way to help people, because I do really think in the end, if you do something where you're helping others, like your fulfillment is going to be totally different. So I totally hope agree. I hope that is a legacy for them.
Yeah. I like that a lot. Last bit is breadwinner bites, which are our rapid fire questions.
Hit me.
What is your breadwinner superpower in one word?
I mean, it's sad because it's not fun, but I am really organized.
Ooh.
Really organized.
Oh, no one's ever said that. I like that one.
Yeah. I don't always want to be organized because it's not as fun.
Yeah.
Like I want to be I don't know, something, but yeah, I'm organized.
I like that. What's the biggest lesson from professional athletics that applies to your motherhood and how you mother?
I haven't always been able to execute this, but control what you can control.
Give me an example.
So I'll give you an example. The sport I ultimately ended up doing was whitewater paddling, and you're running class 5 rivers. What you can control is you can show up having practiced, having been prepared. You yourself can be fit, but you're out in nature.
Yeah.
You cannot fully control you can do your best to control what you can control, but you're not in complete control at any point.
Yeah.
So that was a lesson I learned from that. And, I think as a parent, our philosophy has always been definitely boundaries. It's not a free for all over at the Starrett household at all.
Yeah.
But within those boundaries, wide latitude, to sort of be who they are and pursue the interests they have or whatever. But yeah, control what you can control, I think I'd say that's the one.
That's cool. What would your 2005 CrossFit self think of where you are now?
Oh my God. I mean, I think my 2005 CrossFit self would be shocked that this is what we're doing. Right. Because at that point, I could not have been thinking less that this was a professional path that was viable. I would have maybe fantasized that it would have been.
Yeah.
But I could not think at that point that a CrossFit of any kind, let alone ours, could make money and have staff and, be a real business.
Right.
That was not in my thinking at all. And I definitely did not think yet at that point that I would not be a lawyer. I still was thinking my career was going to be a lawyer.
Sure.
So I think that's what I would say of 2005.
I mean, I said this earlier, but I do think there's a really important mindset that you guys took, that it was a passion that you followed.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds cheesy. It's follow your passions and it'll become, but you really did.
Yeah.
You didn't think about it as a business in the beginning, and it flourished into that.
Yeah. We were able to make decisions. Number one, we had other jobs, so we weren't relying on it to make money. That was clutch.
Yeah.
And then number two, we really started it because we're this thing's fun. We got to figure out a way we can do it with our friends. That was literally our business plan.
That's awesome. I can only hope that happens with the Breadwinners.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like you have a similar, right? Like you, again, hosted this dinner, and I don't know, but I get the sense you were not thinking this was going to be a business, that you just hosted it for completely other reasons, and it wasn't until you were there where you're this is a there. So I feel like there's a lot of similarities between that moment for us and this moment for you.
Yeah. What is I should probably ask your daughters this, but what do you think your daughters' opinions are of what you guys do? What do they tell their friends?
Yeah, I don't even know if they'd use the word entrepreneur, right? They might even say something which would make Kelly die, but they might call their dad an influencer or something, which would make Kelly die because he hates that word and he thinks
he would die.
He thinks he's more serious than that. I definitely know they would probably say that we run some kind of health and fitness company, and that their dad is maybe an influencer, which I think is funny and would make him die.
What is the most underrated thing about movement and longevity?
I think it's the community piece. I do think movement in community is the way. And I mean, again, there's plenty of sports you can do on your own. And, I sometimes like to work out alone or whatever, but I think movement in community is, that's one of the things we do as humans. We walk and move together and we eat together. And so I think movement in community is underrated.
What is aside from movement, what is your favorite like longevity hack?
Reading books.
Oh, I was not expecting that.
Yeah. I mean, of course I'm like into sleep and all those other things too, but I mean, I think
it's not your red light mask.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, which I do have one, and I've literally worn it. Like someone gifted it to me, and I'm like, I don't have time for like, when would I wear this? I just like, even 10 minutes is like too much. I'm like, I don't have time for this thing. I would say, yeah. Well, I'd say, and let me like clarify the reading books thing. We've had several neuroscientists on our podcast, and as a lawyer, I would always look forward at the Supreme Court justices and be like, what's the deal with those guys? Like they're all like 90, and yet they can still like function as a Supreme Court justice.
I've never thought of that.
Right. Like, I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg had like 17 cancers and whatever, but like her brain was still active and they're able to stay functional not just functional, but like functional at a high level mentally.
Sure.
And I'd always be like, what's the deal with those people? And I was always like, I think it's because they're reading all the time and they're like reading and engaging in the world. And I look at my own dad who's 83, almost 84, and he is like always been an avid reader of books.
Yeah.
And then we've had neuroscientists on our podcast who've confirmed that like keeping your mind engaged and active. So I'd say reading books.
I need to start reading more.
It's hard when your kids are little. I didn't read I'm sorry, but like
my head
I
is
think
the
you
pillow
should.
at night.
I think you should give yourself a break on that for a few more years when your kids are so little. Because I did not. It's been I've been able to read way more books when my kids.
I
started to
appreciate
get
you saying
older.
that because
it's like
my brain capacity.
I think like right now you just like read a New York Times article and you're like you've read. So I think you don't put that on your list yet.
Okay. What is the most important thing you want to model for your girls?
Maybe like doing what I say I'm going to do. Like just integrity. I think that would be the word, just integrity.
Yeah.
So,
the last question I asked to every guest, what was the last text you sent to your husband?
My last text was, you'll laugh. I wrote programming ! Because we have this Starrett system program that we do, and we both do different things, but he does the actual strength and conditioning program. And sometimes he gets behind and we need it for next week.
So that was his reminder.
Yes. So I just said programming ! So that was my last text to him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Where can everybody find out about the Ready State?
We have thereadystate.com as our website. Our business Instagram is The Ready State, although we're changing it to Kelly. It's going to become Kelly now, not The Ready State anymore. And then I'm Juliet Starrett on Instagram.
Nice. Awesome. Thanks so much for doing this. This was awesome.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for hosting me at that amazing dinner last night. Congratulations on all that you're doing.
Thanks. Awesome. Thanks, Juliet.